Elizabeth Chappell, a lifelong entrepreneur who finally found my niche. After years of new ideas and jumping from business to business, I figured out how to turn a craft into a successful career. In 2016, I started a monthly subscription box for quilters. That little startup has grown into a thriving, multiple six-figure business that I am so proud of. As a published author, designer of fabrics and patterns being sold throughout the world, my favorite thing to do is to teach others how to grow a career of their dreams. Each week, you'll hear from me or from other guests who are creative entrepreneurs, so you can learn exactly what to do and what not to do to grow a career that's more rewarding and successful than you ever thought possible. If you're ready to turn your craft into a career that you love, I am so excited you're here. Welcome to the Craft to Career podcast. You are in for a treat today. This is a friend of mine who I've been in a little small group, I guess you could call it like a peer-led mastermind. But we've been in a group together for, I guess, a couple of years now. And the entire group is full of four of us, four amazing women. And this is an artist who has been incredibly successful with her business. And you are going to just love hearing from our guest today. First, I'm going to read a review that comes from Pinup Ghoul, which I love that, Ghoul, Ghoul. This person says, "This is fantastic and so timely for me. Elizabeth really gives her podcast the brass tacks of running a successful craft-based business, while not shying away from the hard stuff. I'm loving the clarity and transparency in her approach. I look forward to being an ongoing listener." Thank you so much, Pinup Ghoul. If you've not left a review for the podcast, it just is a swipe of the thumb. You can just tap however many stars you want to give the podcast. If you have an extra second, you can type a few little words that share your thoughts on the podcast. This is incredibly helpful for the podcast, but more importantly, it can help other entrepreneurs to find this podcast and have success with their business. So I call it paying it forward. So take just a second before you meet our guest this week and go ahead and leave a review for the podcast. And now let me introduce you to Alex Kincaid. Alex, I'm so excited you're here on the podcast. For our listeners, can you tell us who you are, a little introduction of who you are in this creative space?
Yeah, and thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So I teach women how to become very good floral watercolor artists.
And our listeners can't see you, but you have these beautiful watercolor florals behind you. You're a very talented painter. So I would love for you to tell us, let's rewind. Has painting florals for, teaching women how to plant florals, has that always been what your dream was? Or how did this come about?
No. So I actually started painting in my late 20s, just as a way to relax and to process some things I was going through in my life. So I actually I went to law school and I finished law school and I did some stuff like you do in your 20s, lots of different things. And then I decided I would go back and get my master's degree in human rights law and refugee studies. And it was very challenging. It was very heavy. It was a lot of the worst stories you could ever hear about the entire world all the time. And so I am a type A perfectionist. I'm going to go and fix the world. I am going to take all of this on my shoulders and go change everything and make everything good for people. And it may come as a surprise to your listeners that I couldn't do that, actually. It turned out. The weight of that just became very heavy for me. And so I paused, I took a break and I stopped my master's and I went back home. I started painting just for fun. So I pushed paint around a paper. An artist friend of mine told me, you can relax just by pushing paint around a paper. You don't have to be good at it. And it was the first time in my life that I felt that freedom to not have to be good at it. And I know that I think women are harder on ourselves typically anyway. And in the creative industry, I think we are also it has to be good right away and we can't enjoy it. We just have to be good at it, So it was the first time in my life that I had this permission to just sit down and just do something just for fun. And to my surprise, that actually means you can become very good at something when you're enjoying it. So I started painting, and I actually never went back and finished my master's degree, which was also the first thing in my life I had never finished. And people started asking if they could buy my paintings. Within a year, someone had asked if I'd come teach a class. And I was so nervous. And I actually looked up photos of that one recently. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I had no idea what I was doing. But I said yes, which is the important thing. I said yes, and I did it. And from there, it just picked up. So I started teaching lots of classes. I would go to greenhouses and coffee shops and bookstores and just teach these small groups of women what I was learning about how to paint flowers. So that's how I started.
That just sounds so fun to go to a coffee shop. How did that work out? The coffee shop owner was like, yeah, come, let's do that.
Yeah, I think looking back now, right? It was before COVID, obviously, right? When we all did stuff. And I think I was just being brave. And at the time, it was really scary because it's hard to package yourself up and go to somebody and just be like, hi, I have this thing I want to do. Can I do it? But I told myself, like, just going to try it. I'm just going to do it. They can either say yes or they can say no. Like, that's the worst thing that can happen is they say no. Well, I guess the worst thing is they can laugh at you, but they didn't. So yeah, I'd put together a little like brochure of what I could do. I had a little book printed of the different projects I could teach people. And then I said, I will do everything. I'll clean up. I'll bring all the supplies. I arranged the pricing. That was always the tricky part because every single place I approached, every venue had a different way of doing it. Some of them wanted to do their own ticket sales and then cut me a check. And some of them wanted to do a split. They get 30% and I get 70. And some of them were like, no, I just want you to bring customers in so you can keep everything. So that was always an area where I just had to be flexible and figure it out on a case by case basis. But yeah, I would go in and kind of pitch myself. I'm a total introvert. So I would sit in the car with my materials and psych myself up and be like, okay, this is what you're going to say. This is what you're going to do. You can do it. 10 seconds. It's just going to take 10 seconds, So yeah, that's how I started.
So how did you get to a point like, well, okay, I'm trying to think, leaving law school and master's, like, did you need an income? Was this, I'm going to do this just for kicks? Like, how did you turn that into, I'm going to earn money with this?
Yeah. So yes, I needed an income, but I also, I had moved back home for a while. And so I had a very supportive family in that respect of like, we'll try this. We support you. Like, go ahead and see if it can work. And I was happy that I started making money pretty quickly. And it wasn't a lot, but I was making money. And that was enough for me to say, okay, it's working. I just need to keep doing it. And I have always in my personality been a person who doesn't stop trying, So if I can make a little money with this, if I work harder, I'll make more money with it. And over the years, I've realized, yes, you work harder and then you add the working smarter into it and it's even better.
Mm-hmm.
But, if I sat down and looked at things and, okay, I can make this amount of money if I do a class or a workshop in person, 2 weekends a month. And then I also bring products to sell. And I also tell them about the next class and print out a thing so they can come and have a coupon for the next one. So I was always trying to incorporate other business practices and be smart about it and create money, even on a recurring basis of having people come back to classes over and over again.
Smart. And how did you first start earning money with your paintings? And how did you get the word out there? Those are two big things.
Yeah. So it's funny that you're asking these questions because I barely do any of what I'm about to tell you anymore because my business has changed so much. But I read a lot about how do you get commissions. So I would put the word out there and I did a lot on Instagram in the early days because it was free. You just post stuff and use the hashtags and try and get people to find you. And they did. And it was exciting because I would post myself painting and then somebody would send me a message like, hi, is this for sale? Can I buy it? And that was always amazing. I did a lot of research on how to create prints, on how to work with people if they had a commission, how to make collections of paintings that were cohesive. So I did a lot of work trying to sell my actual artwork and then also teaching, right? It was very even. I was doing both things. And I'm glad I did that because it made me very good at the craft of painting. So all of that work actually gave me skills that I can now teach to other people. And I don't paint that much anymore for collections or for commissions. Most of what I paint now, I teach about or I try and license as well. So I have a licensing agent. So it's interesting, like that part of my career. And I mean, people make a living as a fine artist all the time. People make a living, they sell their paintings, and it's great. But for me, the teaching was coming naturally. I think I'm very good, and I think it's because of law school. I'm very good at breaking things down into a process that makes sense to people. I'm good at logically telling people what to do. Because I didn't start painting until I was an adult, it was easy for me to remember the challenges at the very beginning and the questions I had. So I was able to take that and answer them logically and tell people like, well, this is your first step and that is your next step. And wow, look at that painting you made. Congratulations, it's really good. So over time, I moved, and you'll get the sense of doom coming in this. I moved throughout 2019 into a full-time only teaching situation. And it was going incredible. January 2020 was like booked solid. I was booked at HOAs and clubhouses and restaurants and private events and corporate events. Like I was booked. My calendar was 3 or 4 months out with classes. And I was starting to make quite a bit of money at that point from teaching. And then, of course, COVID hit and all of it ground to a halt. You know, it was like right at the end of February, people were like, oh, I think I'm going to cancel. And I was like, why? You know, just starting to get little whispers of it. So yeah, everything came to a screeching halt, which was challenging for everybody on earth. But in my business in particular, I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do now?
Yeah. So what seemed like a terrible thing, you know, in 2020, it obviously you had to get creative on your toes. Like, okay, what am I going to do? So I'm curious to hear how you shifted, and has that change that you made stuck? Like, are you still doing the new thing? So yeah, what did you do?
So I had signed up for the immersion class, which a lot of people know about, I'm sure, Bonnie Christine's immersion. And I did that to learn about Illustrator, to learn about art. I did it to make more art. But as I went through it and got to know Bonnie through the course, I kind of looked past that a little bit to, oh, wait, she is making a career out of teaching this once per year, not every weekend, right? Not packing the car full every weekend, or you know, loading all of your stuff into the trunk for a craft show that starts at 6 a.m. every Saturday. And I was like, okay, if she can do it, I can do it. And that has been something my whole life. Like I'm actually really proud of that mindset that I have, because I have other issues, right? We all have like imposter syndrome and, you know, perfectionism that gets in the way. But I think that's one personality trait I'm pretty proud of. Like, well, if other people can do it, then I can do it too. You know, I just have to figure it out. So I saw that she had that course, and that, oh, like when people are done with that course, they go into this membership, right? Where you can create one piece of content and then it lives there forever. Thousands of people can watch it, but you've only had to teach it one time. So that really appealed to me. And so there were a lot of like, I tripped myself up along the way. So I tried to do an online Zoom class, you know, and just have like 10 people come, and I was like, that didn't work, and tried lots of things. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to apply for a coaching call in Flourish, Bonnie's membership, and see what she has to say. And so she picked me, and it was great. And I actually downloaded the audio of it a couple weeks ago because I want to listen to it again, because it's like baby business Alex, you know, like,
yep.
Hi, what can I do? But I remember she was like, oh, you teach watercolor and the world is shut down. Why don't you try a membership? And I was like, oh my goodness, could I do that? So the membership guru is Stu McLaren. And I, at that point, with COVID, with everything shutting down, I didn't have any expendable income to spend on courses or anything else. So I just took his free workshop, and I was like, between watching other people and just learning how they do it from watching and observing and taking the free things. I'm just going to do it. And so I launched a membership. I had no content in it. I did a few Facebook Lives and people seemed to like it. I watched those recently, and they are rough. The video quality is bad. The microphone quality is bad. Like it's bad, but it's okay. People liked it. And so I had 40 people join when I opened the doors, and 40 people joined and they signed up for recurring month-to-month payment. It wasn't a lot. I think it was probably about $1,500 a month to start, but it was incredible to me. I was like, whoa, I cannot believe that worked. Mm-hmm. So I threw myself into learning everything I could about it. I did all of Stu's free things that were available for that year, and it grew to about 100 people. And by the next year, when he opened his full course, I was like, okay, we're going to invest and I'm going to tune out all the other voices, which is advice that I give to people now of if you have one person that you think you can trust the process and they have proven results, you need to just follow that one process. And eventually, if you have success, you can add other things into it, but you need to tune everything else out. And I compare that to teaching watercolor, because when I have total beginner students come to me, I have a process. Like I have a way to teach them where I know I can give them this building block and then build on it and then build on that. But if they're coming and they're watching my process and 2 other teacher processes, well, I can't speak to what those other teachers are doing. And they might be doing it great in their own way, in their own process, but it doesn't work with mine. And so I knew that from teaching painting. And so I thought, okay, I can do the same thing with Stu. I'm just going to do what he tells me to do and follow this course. And so that's another key to success, by the way, is actually implementing, because we creative entrepreneurs get stuck in this loop of learning, and you learn and you learn and you learn and you learn. And then you see all the other stuff that you still have to learn. So you feel like I'm going to go learn some more, but you never get to the point of actually implementing and doing it. And it's hard when you're a perfectionist because it feels like it's never done and it's never good enough. And the truth is, it is never done and it is never good enough, but you just do it anyway. And then you fix it. And then that's still not good enough. And then you fix that.
Yeah, I heard someone talk about, like, if you're trying to lose weight, pick one diet and go with it. If you're trying to do paleo and intermittent fasting and you have all these conflicting things, and like pick one, and it'll work if you do the one. So I like that a lot. And I'm just reflecting back. I don't know if we've talked about this. We met through Bonnie's course, a small group. I was her very, very first immersion course alumni. Oh, wow. And it was taking her course that was the same for me. I was like, wait a minute, I like this business model. If she can do it, so can I, And so I wonder how many people she has influenced as far as career paths, just in opening up like, oh my gosh, there's another way of doing this,
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you're right. Reflecting back, would I have even thought of that? I don't think so. But seeing it in person and just having that moment of like, okay, I am learning, like it is an awesome course for learning Adobe. It's a great course for learning those skills of pattern design. But I was like, past that, I'm watching somebody who is like in their zone of genius doing this thing that I'm pretty sure I could do too in my watercolor world. I have this skill that people want to learn. And I had honed my teaching ability through a couple years of all of those workshops, teaching in person, getting feedback right away of, okay, I can see that I said something and nobody understood what it meant. Okay, I'm going to adapt, which is another thing for being a creative entrepreneur. It is constant adapting, constant flexibility. You can't be too precious about the things that you create. You can't be too married to something that you make that you're like, even if nobody buys it, I'm just going to have it here and it's perfect. Okay, well, you can make that choice, but then it's not a business. It's just a hobby thing that you did. If you want a business, then you are always taking on feedback and saying, well, I loved it, but clearly it's not for everybody. So I'm going to tweak it a little bit. Oh, okay, now people are buying it. And so there's that, I don't know exactly what the word is. It's almost, maybe it's humility, where you're like, oh, I can actually improve it and change it. And I think, I talk now that my business is a lot bigger and more successful. I have people who have started to approach me like, well, what do you think I should do? Or what is your advice? Like all of a sudden you get people asking. And so I boil it down to a lot of the things we're talking about that you have to implement, you have to do the work, you have to be good at your craft, actually spend time being good at something. And then there is that flexibility. But I see so many people get trapped or stuck in the first stages of that where they're like, oh, but I want to do it this way. Well, okay, but then that means you don't want a business, because that's the choice you're making. And I think that sounds harsh to people, but honestly, I think it's good advice because if you want a business, there are certain things you're going to have to do. You have to work.
Yes. Can you give an example of that? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm thinking of certain things, but what is an example of something where they're like, well, I just want to do it this way. And you're like, good luck with that,
Okay. Well, and with the caveat that there is no one way to do things, right? Like there are lots of different ways that you can build a successful business. But for example, there's a lot of people who just hate Facebook, right? And so they'll say, well, I want to build my business, but I don't want to be on Facebook. And so that might work for some people if your audience is somewhere else. But if your audience is on Facebook and you decide, I don't want to be there because I don't like it, then you're never going to reach your audience, right? And so you can be flexible. I mean, I personally don't, in my personal account, spend time on Facebook. I don't find that it's a good use of my time. But you better believe that I am there all the time for my business because my target audience is on Facebook. 90% of them are on Facebook. And so, if I was just going to say, well, I don't want to, it doesn't fit with what I want to do. I just want to make pretty pictures and put them on Instagram. My market is on Instagram. So that's an example, people reach out and they're like, but I don't want to do that. And I'm like, well, and you don't have to. That's a choice you can make, but it means that you're going to have this effect in your business.
Okay, let's talk about that for 1 second because I do. Well, okay, first of all, do people come to you for business advice then? Are they now like, hold on, help
Yeah,
me with my business?
it's funny for me now because so it started. I had an incredible launch last December for my membership, and it has thrust me into the spotlight in the Stu universe where he keeps telling people like, look at Alex, look at her cool membership. And so because of that, people keep finding me on Instagram, on Facebook. I get these emails and I'm like, I love to talk about business, but people in my watercolor world, they're not that interested. They want to learn to paint, but I love it. I love talking about memberships and sales funnels and batching work. I could talk about it all day long. So now that people are kind of coming out of the woodwork, they're like, would you mind giving me advice? I'm like, I would not mind at all. Thank you. Here's my advice.
People are going to hear this and reach
Yeah,
out to
I know.
you.
But that's okay because that goes into the other thing I'm learning in my life, which is boundaries.
Yep.
Yep. So also building boundaries. Well, it's funny because I reached out to Bonnie in December. I had this huge launch. And I reached out to Bonnie just on Instagram and I was like, hey, I just wanted to reach out and let you know that you inspired me to start this thing a few years ago. And today, I have just crossed the 6-figure threshold and I'm so, I don't know, kind of in awe and it's hard to even believe it, but thank you. Right. And she wrote back and she was so gracious, but she said this thing that I have thought about, I think maybe every day since then, which is that there's nothing that will inspire personal growth as much as success in your business. And to break that down, at least how it applies to me, I don't know how it applies to her, but how it applied to me is I suddenly had to hire help and learn how to delegate. And I had to learn how to have boundaries because suddenly there were, thousands of people wanting my attention, not just a couple hundred. And I had to sleep better so that I could wake up and work better. And I had to eat better so that I had more focus. And all of those things are choices too, where I'm like, well, I could not do those things. I could continue to just sleep too late and, eat whatever I want and answer everybody's messages all day long and not hire help and just do everything myself because no one can do it better than me,
Yes.
But those are also choices where if I can be healthier in the other areas of my life, it directly impacts how healthy my business is too.
Wow, you just touched on so many beautiful and amazing things. First of all, let's rewind. How did you get this amazing launch in what, December? Is that when it was?
Yeah, it was in December. And also, let me just say real quick that I do not have any of those things done to perfection, by the way. I just know that
Yep.
I'm a work in progress. So in December, I had a couple months earlier learned in the Stu McLaren universe about a few things that he teaches. So about how to have a workshop. And I had gotten a quick coaching call with him where I was like, I've always been offering my workshops for free and then telling people about my membership, but they convert so low. Not a lot of people join. And he was like, well, have people pay. And like automatically you're cutting out people who aren't going to pay for things. Right. So just that little piece of advice was helpful. I got some advice and also just from observing people that my prices were too low. And so that was a scary one because I was like, oh, there's always that fear, right? Of like, oh no, what if nobody's interested ever? Right. But so I raised my prices and that actually it helps because there's this thing, the official word just left my head. But basically, if you have three identical things, and two of them are, let's say, $10 and one is $2, everybody knows that third one isn't as good, right? Even if it's exactly the same. And so for me, I was like, okay, I need to match more of what the market is around online educational creative content. So I raised my prices. I had somebody do my Facebook ads for the first time. I'd always done them myself, and I hired somebody to do it. And I was nervous because you do believe this lie that you're the only one who can do it the way you want it done. And actually, there's people who can do it better. And
Yep.
that's like a hard thing to realize sometimes. So I had somebody help me with my Facebook ads, and the combination of those things, something took off and it hit just right. And people just started flowing into the workshop that I was doing online. We maxed out that time somewhere around 2,500 people. And so I went live on Facebook and it was the biggest live audience I'd had. There were 700 people watching. And I was like, oh, what is my name? Like, who am I? And what do I even teach? Is it acrylics? No, that doesn't sound right. No. So yeah, I think on day 2, I found my groove a little bit. I was like, okay, I'm just going to pretend nobody's here. Just going to pretend one person is watching.
So to break it down even more, how can I ask how much did you charge for this workshop? I don't know what you called it. And what did you teach?
Yeah, so I charged $10 per person, and then we had an upsell as well. So when people checked out, they could add something onto their order that increased the price. And everything I made from the workshop, I invested back into ads. So that's kind of the goal of where I'm at right now, to not make anything from the workshops, but to just use them to invest in your ads. And then I had from that about 20% of people converted and joined my membership. So we had
Wow, that's
about
great.
530 people join, which was just phenomenal. And honestly, Elizabeth, life-changing. Like
Yeah.
I didn't do the math. After day 1, I went out to the living room. I was kind of shaky and I saw my husband and I was like, I can't look anymore. Like, you look,
Yeah.
tell me if I need to fix anything. I can't do it. I can't do the math. I can't do anything. This is crazy. So also making money, like this is a whole other podcast episode. Making money is a whole mindset thing. I didn't grow up with a lot of money, so I never had a ton of money. And now I still don't have a ton of money, to be clear to everybody. But I'm making an income that is comfortable. And so feeling like you're unworthy of that, or feeling scared of it, or feeling like, well, is this going to change me, or what do I do with it? There's all these traps around money, which again goes back to that same piece of advice that you are going to have personal growth as you have business growth. You have to adapt. You have to do the work and read books about mindset and understand yourself better for your business to succeed, which I never would have guessed that they are so intertwined with each other, And I didn't answer your other question, which is I taught 5 days. I taught Monday through Friday, a live class each day that week. and we did a different painting each day that week, and then kind of combined them at the end. So that's my new process for workshops. I'll be doing one in a couple weeks also. On May 6th, the newest watercolor week starts, and we're doing wildflowers this time.
Ooh, fun. So we'll put a link to that so people who want to join. So that's still, is it $10? Have you raised the price for
Yep.
that?
Nope, it's $10. $10 to join. That gives you access to all the lessons and the replays for 3 weeks. And then I also talk about my membership because that is the best place to learn from me. It's where I'm accessible. I am so proud of the community that we have. They are the nicest, most encouraging group of women. It's a private Facebook community, and everybody is just so positive and so helpful. And so I love that. I think it's one of the best parts of the whole membership.
Well, and I will say for my listeners, you may be interested because of the painting, but odds are you're a business owner. The best advice that I've ever gotten is go and check this out. Go jump into people who are doing launches that are successful, who are doing memberships that are successful. See how it's being run. And then you can implement, like we both learned from Bonnie, and that was our like, aha, you know? So
Yep.
if you can jump in and take a look around, see how she's running her 5-day challenge, see how you can tweak that for your own product, see how she talks about the membership so it doesn't feel slimy at the end, like, oh,
Yeah.
surprise, this is a
Yep.
sales pitch, you know? Which brings
Exactly.
my other question. It is without fail, the more success you have, the more there are people who are going to throw stones and say some negative things. How have you handled that? I just know that it's happened. I don't even have to ask. I know that it has. So how have you handled that?
Not always well.
Right?
um, you know, I think so. This might not be the best way to handle it. And again, keep in mind, I am a work in progress. But the way I am working on handling it is to just take myself out of the equation. So I have somebody who reads my inbox, right? And if there's very negative things, I just don't see it anymore. And I think that that is better for my mental health for sure, for how I run my business. I joined a, Shannon Bresnahan. She has a course all about creating community inside of a membership.
Cool.
And it helps with retention and it helps with building a community. And so I realized a few months ago that I was focusing on people who were leaving, and that was making me feel really bad, right? There's always going to be people who leave. That is life. I have left things, right? It's not personal. It's almost always, hey, I don't have time. I don't have money right now. I'm going to go do something else. Oh, I discovered I don't really want to paint. I want to go play the piano instead. That is life. But for me, right, it's like, hi, Alex, I don't like you, so I'm leaving. That's how I read
Right.
all of those excuses. And I realized I was getting to this point where I was resenting people, where I was resenting having to give customer service and feeling like, oh, if people are just going to leave, like, what's the point of being nice to everybody, which is not who I am. And I caught myself really early in that. And part of it was I was overworking myself. I needed to hire more help. I was just getting burned out on it. So I've hired people. I'm learning to delegate better. And having that separation of like, I'm no longer going to focus on the leaving. And this is a thing that Shanna teaches a lot of, is focus on the people who stay, focus on the people who love what you offer, focus on how you can serve them better. And it's crazy that shifting your mind to like, sometimes I even think of specific members, ones that I build up a rapport with, and we talk to each other, and I think that's the person I'm talking to today in this class. Like, I am now excited to teach this class because I like that person, and she's ready to learn, and she's going to do the things that I'm telling her to do about painting. And I'm no longer thinking like, oh, I'm talking to this person and I need to be desperate and like do everything I can to make every single person happy. And so, yeah, I have shifted my mindset about that thing. I've put up some walls to separate myself. And I don't know who I first heard this from. It might have been Bonnie. I don't remember. But basically, it's my house, right? I get to make the rules and I get to tell people when they leave. And that was so much freedom. So when people are negative, when people are mean, I just delete them. I just block and delete them. And I used to argue. I used to be like, no, that's not true. Like, have you looked at this? Have you looked at that? I still have that tendency. Again, it
Mm-hmm.
might be the law school. It might be the oldest child in me. I don't know. But I'm better now at being like, no, I'm not going to waste my time with this
Yeah.
argument. I have better things to do with my life. So I'm just going to say, sorry, you feel that way, and delete it. And that's it. It's gone.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you ever struggle because, well, this is totally personal asking. Because I've had some negative comments on Instagram, and sometimes I'm like, this is my house. I don't need to have this live here, and I'll delete it. And people were like, you deleted my comment, as if it's the worst thing in the world. I'm like, I absolutely deleted that comment. Do you
Yeah.
ever deal with that? Like, yeah, I did. And
Yeah. I just tell people I have a standard that is to be kind and to build people up. And if you're not going to meet that standard, then I'm going to delete it. And I apply that standard in my groups now to people about themselves too,
I
because
like
people
that.
are very self-critical, especially about creating. And so they'll create and they used to, they don't get away with it anymore. Say, this is terrible. I will never get any better. I don't know why I'm even trying, and post it.
Yep.
And I don't let any of it anymore. It's in my community guidelines now that negativity towards yourself is also not allowed. Now, if it's constructive and it's like, this doesn't look as good as I want it to, does anybody have advice for how I could change it? That's different.
Yep.
But when there's nothing redeeming and it just brings down, like, you can feel it, right? You can, when you read something like that, you're just like, oh, it's like an Eeyore moment. You're like, I don't even want to do anything now. Like,
Yep.
so yeah, I just delete it. And I instruct my VAs too. I'm like, our community culture, that we are about encouragement and kindness and positivity and helping each other. So feel free to delete things when you see them. Yeah.
Which brings up my question of hiring. So,
Ooh,
oh, it's so hard.
it's so
Okay.
hard.
In what order did you hire people on? Like, how did you decide I'm going to hire this person? And then how on earth did you find them and train them?
Okay. This is a hard conversation because I don't know the answers and I still am struggling to do it well and to delegate well. I struggle I have people pleasing tendencies. So I mean, you're going to laugh. I know some other people will resonate with this, but I had some people who would do a project for me and I'd be like, yeah, that's great. And privately, I'm like, I will now go and change everything.
Yes.
Like, because it wasn't what I wanted, but I'm afraid to tell you. So, oh man, it's hard. Even today, I had a conversation with my husband. I was like, I need to be more direct, right? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm scared. I don't know how to do that.
Yes.
I find it challenging. But I guess in general, the best way I found to hire help is word of mouth. So I have somebody that helps with my ads. I have an ads manager now, and I was referred to her by another membership owner who had a great launch and great success. So I reached out and was like, hi, can you share her name with me and introduce us? So word of mouth. And then through her, I met the woman who's helping me with managing all the marketing aspects of things and helping put the automations into effect, because funnels can be complicated and I can technically do all of these things. But again, there are other people who can do them better than me. So I still like to know how everything works. I will always want to know how everything works. I think it's just who I am. But she referred me to another person. I found a service that you kind of fill out your personality and your Colby Strength Finders test and I think it was N Myers-Briggs, and it matches you with VAs who work well with you and whose strengths kind of balance out areas where you might be weaker. So a great example, I have a wonderful VA, and we were just talking last week. She was like, sometimes you'll have an idea and then you think about it for like 6 months. But sometimes I have an idea and I just do it right away. And she was like, have you noticed that? She said it nicer than that. But I was like, I have. That's because I need to think through every single eventuality that could possibly happen.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so gracious. She was like, you are so good at thinking through the potential issues and kind of coming up with solutions to them before it even starts. And she said, in my life, I've noticed like I start things as soon as I have an idea. And then if problems come up, I'm like, oh no, I didn't think of that. But she was like, I think we balance each other out really well because, and it's true. I will say, oh, you know what would be good? If we did this thing in the Facebook group, let's think about that. And a week later, she'll be like, okay, so I did it. Do you want to go look at it? And I'm like, wow, I was thinking next year. So that has been really good. But I did have a few negative experiences first. And I think everybody does. I
Yes.
don't know anybody who just gets the perfect people right away. I felt frustrated with you hear from people who have help. They always say, oh, I should have had help sooner. Hire help as soon as you can. But when you don't have money to do that, you can't. And so it's very frustrating sometimes to hear that advice of, well, then you need to get help. Well, I can't afford help right now, so I'm still going to do everything myself. So I get there's that tension too. But if you can find a couple things you can offload, things that you really don't like to do or that are just taking time for me, it's answering emails. Honestly, I can spend all day in there if I go in there and get nothing else done. So
Yep.
for me, that was the first thing I was like, I need somebody to help me with this.
Well, and yeah, I was going to say with hiring, generally speaking, we're creative entrepreneurs. We're really good at the painting, the quilting, whatever that is. We're not business owners, like rarely. And so hiring and training, generally, I've seen when I've hired someone and it hasn't gone well, I don't know, 80% of the time, it generally falls on me. I didn't train them very well. Like I'm not communicating very well. I just, we're not, it's not a natural thing. I've joked like I need to hire a boss for me to run my company and just let me do my zone of genius and let them run the company. Like I don't want to do that.
Absolutely. Resonates so much. I've gone through a few different like attempts at training where I'm like, I'll just take a video of everything I do. And that works if somebody learns visually. But what if they learn by doing, Well,
Yep.
okay, then I'm going to go make a checklist of everything you have to do. And I think I can tend to give information overload on people. And it is that it doesn't come naturally to me. I'm not naturally good at delegating or training. And so that's an area that I'm working on. And there's always going to be another area to work on.
I
You're going to
know.
get good at one thing and then the next thing comes up. So that's just the phase I'm in right now.
It is so true. So, well, I don't know if you can share because people are going to ask who your ads agency is, or are you like, I can't share that.
No, I can't share it because she only takes on a few customers and she works specifically with artists.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different. But word of mouth, find somebody who you see them doing a really good job, just like you recommended earlier. Like go, even if it's outside of the zone that you're in, go and watch how other people do things. Not in an icky way, not in a I'm
Right.
here to like copy everything and rip you off. Not like that. And honestly, I think it's good to introduce yourself and say like, hey, I'm really inspired by your business here because I just want to kind of learn and see how you interact with people. That's way better than kind of sneaking in the back door and
Yep.
being like, what's going on in here, And that opens up a conversation where then you can later say, your ads were really beautiful. Do you work with somebody? Or I saw that you had somebody working on your team answering comments. Where did you find that person? And then you can have conversations about it that are honest and open.
Yes. Well, and I'll say I'm curious for you. When I had my membership and with my course, I will look for students who are very friendly, very active in the community, answer questions really well. And I will reach out to them privately and be like, hey, are you looking for work? I'd love to pay you to do this moving forward. You did such a great job of just voluntarily. Have you found people that way?
I haven't, but that's not the first time I've heard that advice. And I've been thinking about it, especially in Facebook groups where you need more people to just comment on everything and make people feel seen and heard. I will say I have an incredible member and she lives nearby. And last year I did a big trade show and I don't know, we had met face to face once. She had come to some event that I was at and she was one of my first members. who joined the very first time that I opened it, and all of my help for the trade show couldn't make it. Like my husband took a day
Yeah.
off work to help, and I mean, it's intense. Like they're exhausting, right? When you have a booth,
Yeah.
I mean,
And
I
you're
was at my wit's
on.
end.
Yeah.
I like put out the bat call, right? And I was like, is there anybody I know who lives nearby who could help me with this? And she was like, I would love to help you with that. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, and she did. She was awesome. She showed up for the day. And I mean, you're right. You have this business that attracts people who are kind of like you. If you enjoy a positive atmosphere, well, you're going to attract people who enjoy that too. You know, if you're a hard worker, hard workers will also gravitate towards you, I think. And so, yeah, there's definitely a deep well of incredible people within your customer base too.
Yeah. And then my last question, to be respectful of your time, but can you kind of share what people get when they join your membership? Like how often do doors open? How often do you release things? What does that look like?
So it changes, right? I mean, it's constantly tweaking and changing things. And it's changed from when I first started. I did a live class every week, and I couldn't do it anymore. After I don't even know how long. It was within a year, I think, that I was like, I am exhausted because it requires you to be in a certain place every week at this time. So I learned a little bit more about planning ahead. That's probably the part that I'm the worst at in my life, by the way. It's like planning ahead, preparation. And I started planning content 6 months out. And so I think that it has to do with communicating what's going to happen to your members. So then they're just not taken by surprise. And when you say, hey, we're going to do a live class next week, and then the following 2 weeks, there's going to be a pre-recorded course that gets delivered to you, then they know exactly what's coming, and they're not disappointed like, oh, we're not doing a live. Oh, okay. They know what's happening. So I still deliver a piece of content every single week. Sometimes it's a live class, sometimes it's a question and answer session or critiques of paintings. I do master projects. And so those are like very in-depth paintings that are going to take multiple hours to finish. And so those I always pre-record, and I have a couple different cameras at the same time. So I get different angles, and I go into Premiere Pro and I spend days of my life editing them so that they are beautiful. I actually find that part kind of relaxing. It's a thing I should outsource, but I kind of like editing videos. Sometimes it's a workbook. So I did one recently about how you scan paintings, and there's all the different settings and all the different things you need to know to scan paintings. Coming up, I'm going to start talking more in my membership about selling your paintings and doing craft shows, how to make fine art prints, because my membership has been there for a few years now. And some of the members have become such good artists that they want to start selling things, and they want to start, exploring that world and taking commissions. So, and then I have 2 watercolor weeks a year. Those are the main enrollment periods. Sometimes there's a little flash sale behind the scenes, but really those are the main enrollment times. And I welcome everybody in and then close the doors and just take care of all of the new people who have joined and walk them through where to start in the content. There's over 200 hours of lessons now. So I have to be very clear about like, start here, if you're brand new to watercolor, start with this video. If you have been painting for a while, you can start with this video. So a lot goes into the onboarding process as well.
Which is nice to walk them through all of that. And I remember Stu actually was saying one of the biggest reasons people leave memberships is because there's too much content. So back when you were like doing one live thing a week, my guess is people weren't even consuming it, that you were like working so hard for what,
well, that also goes back to, am I trying to make every single person happy? And I was. And, my target audience, my market is mostly retired women. And so they have more free time than, like your average mom at home or something. And so there are a lot of very vocal members who are like, okay, you just published that and I finished it. And now what's next? And so I've had to also be like, okay, well, there's also all those other projects. Like, You could repaint one from a couple years ago and see how much you've improved. Like, I try and make things available for the super high achievers too. But then I hear from the other also vocal people who are like, I can't keep up with everything. I'm falling behind. And so for me, a lot of it has come down to messaging of saying there is no falling behind. Every person is on their own path. Every person's on their own trajectory. You can do all of this at your own speed. I'm going to keep releasing new things every week. You don't have to do it that week, or you can if you want, but it's your own path. It's your own speed. So, and then comfortably, right? Like most people are in the middle of that. It's not too fast or too slow, and they're just plugging along and slowly getting better.
Awesome. So yeah, I guess if you were to summarize, how does one do this? But
Yes, I know.
what's the biggest, I guess, let me ask it this way. What have you enjoyed the most about having a creative business?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I got to think about it for a second. All right, I'm going to be just brutally honest here because I could give you lots of like really cheesy answers, but the brutally honest answer is that I really like doing things my own way.
Uh-huh. Yep.
I really like not having to listen to anybody else. I mean, of course, you have to listen to feedback, blah, 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 right? But I mean, it's my business. I make the rules. I figure it out. I know what I like. I know what I don't like. If I want to teach a class on this thing, I can. If I don't want to teach a class on that thing, I don't have to. I really like being my own boss.
That I do. I think we have so much in common. The more I'm hearing you speak, I'm like, we're very similar. And okay, I lied. I have one last question. It's
Okay,
it's
all
a
right.
big topic, but just in a nutshell.
Oh yeah. Unlike the other ones we've covered, boundaries, people pleasing, how to
Well,
grow a
yeah, no, this
business.
is a big one. The money, like
Oh yeah.
how are you coping with, my guess is there's parts of your brain that are like, I don't deserve this. I don't, who, me? I don't even know what other thoughts, but like, how are you coping with that? And how have you let that mindset get out of the way so that you can welcome that success?
Good question. I don't have time to talk about that today. Goodbye. Just kidding. Okay, so a couple things. I know for sure Bonnie has said this. I know for sure Stu has said it. And those are two people who I really admire the generosity of their businesses and their openness and transparency. And they've been very successful. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to those people. And they both have said that money does not change who you are. It just amplifies whatever was already there. So if you are already a person who makes $1,000 a month, but you're generous and you like to help people and you want to do good things with your money, when you make $100,000, that's going to be the same, right? You're still going to want to help people and be generous. Whereas if you're miserly and have a very scarcity oriented mindset, when you're not making anything, that will probably translate as well. It's going to amplify whatever's already there. So that's one thing. The other is that my husband is he's a data analyst. That's his job. He loves spreadsheets. I do not. And so for a lot of it, I'm like, here's the numbers. Like you go, what do you think we should do? And then we'll talk about it together. Right. So a lot of it is preparing for the future. We had a few lean years as I was building my business. So we're making that up with retirement and figuring it out as we go, honestly. And I actually, on your recommendation, hired a bookkeeper, Serena, and that has been super helpful as well. This is not a thing I'm proud of, but I have tended to be a little bit like a turtle when it comes to finances in the past. Just stick my head in the sand. Is that a turtle? No, turtles put it in their shell. I think ostriches put their head in the sand.
Ostrich, yep.
Yeah, but you get the point, right?
Yeah.
You know what? I just don't want to know. If I don't know, it's fine. And fortunately, it was fine. Don't recommend doing that. Fortunately, it was fine. But it's been really helpful to have the bookkeeping service too, saying like, okay, here's what's coming in next month. And you were paying double for this program.
Yep.
I'm sure that's happened to a lot of people, maybe if you're like me. And then, yes, there's the entire mindset of like, I don't deserve this. I don't feel worthy of it. And it's still a struggle. I have to think about, I work really hard, and this is a logical next step. And I still want to be a person that does good for people and that makes a difference and can make an impact. And it's funny because I mentioned this. So I'm in a mastermind and we were all talking about this issue. And I was like, making money, as silly as this sounds, because everybody will be like, duh, we all know that. Making money doesn't fix anything, right? It actually is an extra, and people are like, well, it's easy to say that once you make money, but hear me out, okay? It is a thing that you then have to deal with, right? You can't just ignore it. So if you are a person who isn't content in your life, money isn't going to make you content. If you're a person who doesn't like to work, making money, it doesn't make you like to work. Like, it doesn't actually fix any of the root things that we struggle with as women or creatives. If you're insecure before, you're going to be insecure after. And maybe that's not a lesson you learn until suddenly, you make money. And then you're like, oh, I was expecting something a little bit different. Like, oh, okay. So I don't know. I guess maybe my overall advice on everything that we've talked about is to do the hard work on yourself too, not just your business. Be healthy, like get a good night's sleep and go for walks and eat food that is good for your body and read books that challenge your mind and that challenge the beliefs you have about yourself. And I think you'll be more prepared for success when it comes, because it's going to keep raising more issues.
Yep, that is so beautifully said. I feel so like this was such a great conversation. And I feel so well, and maybe because we are so similar, I'm like, that was all so well said.
You're like, I would have said it the exact same way. That was amazing.
That just couldn't have been better. But for our listeners who want to find you, where is the best place for them to find you?
So everywhere on the internet and Instagram and Facebook, I'm Alex Kincaid Art. And I know you'll share links with that. And then alexkincaidart.com/watercolor week will take you to everything about watercolor week, about my membership, all about that. So you're welcome to join, whether you want to paint or you just want to get a look inside and see what it's like. Tell me you came from here so I can say hi.
Awesome. Well, we'll be sure to check it out. Definitely go and take a look at her beautiful watercolor florals. They're stunning. So thank you so much, Alex, for being here.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you. Thank you for pulling all these hard, vulnerable answers out of me.
You bet. Anytime.
Yeah.
I hope you loved hearing from Alex as much as I loved chatting with her. Her success is so cool to see. Her openness, relatability, her business, just the things that she shared, that she's learned about. I can't emphasize enough how wonderful everything she said is. I just want to say yes, yes, yes to all of that. So be sure to go and follow Alex and check out her watercolor class, her demo class, and her membership, especially if that's something, if you're interested in using that same kind of launch strategy or having a membership, you're going to want to be sure to check that out. So thank you so much for being here. Don't worry, I'll be back next Friday with a brand new episode. Until then, have a wonderful week. Take care.